Now, if I told you yesterday was my mixtape day, what else could that mean?
Trash day, baby!
And now, you're watching the A, bruh. Download my mixtape on YouTube. Welcome to Bodie Vision.
Hey, so what is up and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on another video. Today, in this video, I was planning on uploading a video before this where I prime and paint a bunch of stuff left over for the 240 over there, but it was too cold to prime. Now, I'm not saying it's too cold for me because I know you guys up north are dying, but when we have a hurricane down here and Florida's closed, the rest of the state is functioning. Now it's the other way around. Every other state is not functioning. In Florida, we're doing all right. We're just fine. Thanks for asking. So, we're about to get started working on that F1 style suspension for Project Pepto, and all the stuff that I need to get the coilovers going is in this box right here. So this right here is pretty much everything that I'm going to need to build the coilover itself. Comes with the shock right here, the spring, little end pieces, and then the little top hat and a little spanner thing. That'll all go on there, and then it'll eventually look like this. So this is this put together, Betty Crocker style. I got one in the oven as the other one's being prepared, so that way we can get this program moving a little quicker. So if you haven't figured it out by now, by the thumbnail, by the title, by everything, what I'm going to be doing for the car is assembling an F1 style suspension, or Cantilever suspension, or push rod suspension. There's a couple different names for what I'm going to be doing, and some of the advantages are, well, this is how it's going to sit right here. There's going to be a rod coming up from the control arm that I'm going to have to build, and then this is going to go there, and then there's going to be a pivot at this point right here. This is just a magnet holding it in there, so that way I can kind of see where everything's going to live. So some of the advantages are I'm going to be able to adjust everything from in the trunk without having to get underneath the car. Also, I'm going to have the adjustability of the end links once those go on top of the rods, the vertical rods, and then also the most important part is it's just pretty freaking cool. Now, I know some people are going to hate on it and just ask why and say it's pointless, and I kind of agree with you, but when I'm building this car, Project Pepto, I really want to make this car stand out, and I've only seen a handful of cars with this suspension style in the back of it, especially Hondas, and I know it's been done before. I'm not the first one to do it, but I just kind of want to give it a shot and do my take at it. So how I'm going to get started, the first thing that I want to do is I want to build those little vertical links, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this is just the bottom of a shock that came out of the EG hatch from the last video, so that base part is going to go to a rod that goes vertical, and that rod is right here. So this is going to be the vertical rod, and the bottom part of that vertical rod is just going to have that fork on it from the shock, and the top part is going to have this right here go in there. So that's what's called a bung, and then this rod end link is going to go right there, and that's going to give me some adjustability, and then this is going to counter it, make sure it's tight. I got to taper this down a little bit and then get a real nice weld in there. So this is going to be inside the car connecting to that triangle. This is going to come down to the fork and connect to the lower control arm, and those are going to actually be going up and down. So the first thing I got to do is I got to get that fork cut off the bottom of the old stock shock. Alright, so that's looking pretty good. Got the fork cleaned up real nicely. So again, if you didn't understand, this is gonna go just like that. Sit right there. and I'm gonna have to clean up both of those surfaces and weld them really nicely, real strong. We gotta make sure this is solid, so I'm gonna weld it at really high heat, make sure I kill it, so that way it's not gonna be weak at all. There's this one, and then there's also this one, so that'll work out just fine. Each one of these is gonna go to the bottom. I think you're kind of maybe starting to be able to picture it a little better now. So right here I have each of my links or each of my vertical rods, whatever you want to call them, and then each link at the end of it, you see how I tapered this down here and tapered this down here? Each link is going to get a bung, and then each bung is going to get a rod end link or a spherical bushing or a heim joint. I've heard them called all those different things, but either way, that's what it is. So now we can kind of get an idea of what that's going to look like in the car. And I also wanted to point out that, I don't know if you noticed, but my shop is kind of angled a little bit, and that's just what I'm working with over here. Don't bash the shop angling, it's fine. It works just fine for the painting and everything. But as far as doing frame work, suspension work, and all type of geometry that you need to do, I'm not going to make sure that the car is on a flat surface. I'm just going to do one side how I want it to be and make the other side exactly identical. So each of these rod end links were 16 inches, and as you can see, they're both the same size. We got the stock forks or end shocks, whatever you want to call them, from the OEM shocks on there, and then those are going to go on the lower control arm. As the suspension bumps up, those rods are going to carry that motion upwards, and then around that triangle it's going to pivot around that right triangle, and then the weight or the bump is going to get transferred into the shocks inside of the car. Now the bracket that I'm going to have made, or that's currently being made by a fab shop on one of those laser tables, going to be real nice. Like I said, each one of the holes is going to be 4 inches from the corner of the right angle or the right triangle. So it's going to be 4 inches from here to the pivot hole, and then 4 inches from the pivot up to where the coilover is going to go. So right here, this triangle is exactly 4 inches. So if I have the center line of the triangle at each one of the circles, 4 inches from there, 4 inches to the pivot, and then 4 inches to here, that's going to give us an idea of where the shock is ultimately going to live. So it's going to look something like that. So that's pretty proportional. And then also I got a bracket made here to kind of lift it up. I want to make sure the mechanical motion of the triangle is as good as possible, where if I had it like this, it'd really just be restricting it. So I want it to be somewhere like this, so that way it can pivot nicely around this, as if this pivot point was a circle, so that way it can push down the shock and expand the shock as good as possible. And also I wanted to point out that this right here is going to be 4 inches and this right here is going to be 4 inches, so that's a 1-to-1 ratio. So I'm not going to be messing with the ratios of the shock or the suspension or anything. I've seen people where they'll take this 2 inches and then they'll double this by 4 inches, so that way one of them has a mechanical advantage over the other, and I'm not going to get into anything like that. I just want to keep it a 1-to-1 ratio to make sure it's as close to stock as possible. And also these spring rates, I got them specifically for the weight of this car, so I don't want to mess with the ratios at all. So it's going to live roughly like this, and then I'll be able to adjust everything from in here. As I'm going over a bump, you'll see this compress, and Man, I cannot wait to see this in the car. I think this is really going to set this car off from a lot of the other ones that I've seen. So the next thing I want to do is I want to make my post for my pivot point. So it's going to be roughly right here. And again, it's going to be 4 inches from here to there. So I'll worry about that once I'm there. So what I want to do is I want to make sure when the car is at ride height that this is completely flat with this bar or parallel. That way the triangle has plenty of room to go down and it has plenty of room to go up. If at ride height it was like this, it wouldn't have much place to go. So I want to make sure we maximize the travel by making it like this. So my thinking is I want to make this about the same height as this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this 2 inches, since this is about 2 inches off of here. So then once the car gets compressed, if I need to raise it a little bit, I can adjust it at the link. I can raise this one or lower this one or vice versa. You get the idea. Alright, so I got my 2 little post links made. Both of them are just 2 inches, just like this. And again, I did this little 45-degree taper. Man, if I had a lathe, if I had a bandsaw, if I had all kinds of other stuff, this would be a lot easier. But I also wanted to show you guys that you don't need a lot of crazy tools to be able to do this. And I'm using my angle grinder with the flap disc as well as a cutoff wheel. And then I'm just kind of cleaning it up as I go. And it looks pretty nice. So here's what it's going to look like inside of the car. So we got this post right here, which is what I just made. And keep in mind, it's not necessarily gonna stay this height. This is just all kind of mock-up. I can cut it down to shorten it up. So the idea is this and this are gonna be 4 inches apart from here to over there. And the way that it's going to work is my plates that I'm being made, see 4 inches right there, 4 inches from tip to 4 inches to the right angle. My plates that are being made are going to sandwich these parts, and then a through bolt is going to go through each one of them. And then I'm going to also have a gusset right here to strengthen it, a gusset right here to strengthen it. And this might not be going through here. I might do a plate like what they do on roll cages, but this is going to live right here regardless, but this might not be the end joint. These 2 holes right here, these just so happen to be the holes that they use to run the airlines through, and they did a pretty solid job making sure that they were even. So now really good progress for today. Again, everything is just kind of tacked up, mocked up. Nothing is set in stone. I'm just kind of trying to figure out where everything's going to be at the final place, and I can adjust everything. And even the little forks that I welded to the up rods, I can break those welds because they're just tacked. So everything can change from here on out. Again, I just want to get an idea of where they're going to be in their final place. So right now, man, I'm really at the mercy of the fab shop. I don't know when they're going to get those things cut out. Hopefully it's pretty soon. The shop is really cool. It's like a custom truck shop where they do all kinds of crazy mud truck stuff. Kind of a different genre of the car community, but man, I love all that stuff. I love mud trucks, I love low riders, I love the tuner cars, I love muscle cars, really everything. And I believe more people should be like that as well, to really just appreciate the car culture for what it is, and to have an understanding that not everybody likes the same thing as much as the next person does. But I appreciate all aspects of the car culture, man. So what I'm gonna do right now is wait for a phone call. Hopefully they can get those parts done pretty soon, and I'm gonna run over to the store to get the through bolts, so that way I can make sure when I have everything, I'm gonna be ready to go. So that's gonna be it for this one. Leave in the comment section below what you think. I want to know your opinion. I want to know your thoughts. Have you seen this style before? Cantilever suspension, push rod suspension, F1 style suspension. Have you seen it? What are your thoughts? So thank you guys so much for watching. Like this video, comment, subscribe, do all the stuff. I'll see you on the next one. You know what it is, YouTube. I'm out.